Hello, welcome back for Unit 6 of our Contemporary World course here at Waldorf University. And as we kind of move into this sixth unit of 8, I want us to be focused on the road ahead, both what we have coming this week, and then I would also encourage you to take a look at Unit 7 and Unit 8, especially finding a proctor for that final exam. That's a thing we should be working on now. It'll be difficult if you get into that final week and you're trying to work through some of this different stuff. If you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to me or your academic advisor. I don't have a lot of control over the proctoring system per se, or even getting your proctors approved, and I don't have the access code to the test. So if you really put this off and then you email me frantically the day before the class is over in a couple of weeks, I won't be able to provide you with a lot of help. So I want you to think about this now, see what we have coming, make a plan for how you can finish out the course in the best way possible. This week, though, in the video, we're going to talk about our discussion board topic. We're going to talk about our historical significance, which is our skill for the week, and then we're going to talk about your Unit 6 essay. So let's talk about this stuff. First, our skill is historical significance. And on the surface, this is appears to be a really easy skill, but it's very difficult, I think, because you have to zoom all the way out to like 10,000 feet and see the big picture, which takes all of our previous skills. We think about the things that go into historical significance, or our definition, how events are relevant and important to modern scholars. We have to be able to see the continuities and changes. We have to understand progress and decline, what groups and people are involved. We have to look at that political, economic, social, and cultural evidence. And we have to click it all together to make some kind of coherent picture as to why this is something we're still talking about today. In a course that covers the entire world back to 1945, there's a lot of different stuff we could talk about. So why are the topics that we have at hand things that we're continuing to talk about? How have they shaped the world today is a way I often encourage students to think about this. If you can understand how an event really reverberates in our present times, that'll give us a hint towards historical significance. If you can understand why an event was important when it happened and kind of what legacies it has left for the modern world, I think that is a major step on the path to understanding historical significance. You can also think about maybe an easier way to put this is, why do we care today? Why is this something that we're still talking about? Why is this something that has endured from all the different events that pop up on a day-to-day basis around the world? So be thinking about those things. You're going to use it on your discussion board this week. So the discussion board question this week is, Browers and Sanders write that observers of the post-World War I Middle East referred to the region as one of states without nations, nations without states. And that's on page 353. Does this characterization still fit the region generally? If so, why? Why not? How has the debate ensured the Middle East remains historically significant to studies of contemporary world history? So we're kind of moving out of this imperialist era, and in the post-World War II time period, we're seeing kind of a few different things develop in the Middle East. So in order to understand this thing, first we have to talk about nations and states. So one of the things that you want to think about is a nation is often considered a kind of group that can be specifically identified but doesn't necessarily have formal political status. So when we think about nations, I think about this in terms of sports a lot of the time. It's become a really popular thing dating back to the I first saw this maybe with the Boston Red Sox leading up to their 2004 World Series, that they started to talk about all their fans as Red Sox Nation. And now you see it all over the place. But even at Waldorf, sometimes you'll see when the athletics, if you follow them on these social media platforms, they'll put on there like a hashtag Warrior Nation. So usually when I think about nations, I think about them as groups of people, so we're back to our social and cultural factors, that kind of identify with one another for a variety of different reasons. So in the Middle East, we have a lot of different nations or populations that have their own specific interests, but then come together within a formal state entity. So states we want to think about as formal entities that have political boundaries and are represented in the international political community, which will tie into what you're doing over on your Unit 6 essay as well, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So when you think about this question, I want you to think about how this is kept these countries in the news. The most easy way to look at this would maybe be Israel and Palestine. The idea that we have a formalized state in Israel and we have a nation of Palestinians that are kind of within that state. And these people have different competing interests. They have different kind of ideas on how day-to-day life should be run in that area. And we want to think about how this has continued to lead to historical significance, especially as it relates to the class. So in the Unit 6 essay, you're going to take this kind of creative assignment and then craft an essay. And so for this, the prompt says that you've just been elected to the next Secretary General of the United Nations, and you have been kind of tasked with solving this conflict in the Middle East. So I want you to pick one of the options. We have 4 different options that you can look at and identify one of them that will help you on the road to resolving some of the issues in the Middle East. Don't try to game the assignment and just say like all of these things are important. I understand they're important. That's why we have them as options. So pick one as the first thing you would focus on. So you could talk about problems between Israel and Palestine. We just talked about that with our nations and states kind of issue. You could talk about another nation-state issue with Sunnis and Shiites. Maybe you're familiar with this because of the American war in Iraq and the idea that Iraq is a very difficult country for democracy to work in because we have 3 different competing nations. We have a large Sunni population, we have a large Shiite population, and then we have the Kurdish population in the northern part of Iraq, all grouped into one state, but representing diverse interests on their kind of nation type guidelines. You could also talk about oil and natural resources and the Western world, or just outside of the region, different interests that compete for oil in the region. This could provide you with all sorts of opportunities to talk all the way back to American kind of involvement in Iran. You could talk about the U.S.-Iraq war again. You could talk about all sorts of different things. We talk about oil in the West and the Middle East. The final topic you could talk about is continuing U.S. and Russian competition for influence. This is obviously still a major and long enduring issue that's important to any study of the Middle East, particularly in the contemporary world context that we're working in. This idea that throughout the Cold War, we're seeing these 2 powers compete for influence and access to natural resources throughout the region. And then also in the modern era, you could look at the current conflict in Syria and how the United States and Russia have competed in that kind of area as well. So pick one of these things. Make sure that you're talking about this in depth. You should have at least 2 pages, double spaced, Times New Roman, all those kind of things, and be bringing in evidence that you're citing in APA style. If you have questions on any of this stuff, make sure you're reaching out. I am here to help you however I can. I appreciate the hard work you put in the course so far and look forward to the great things you're going to do this week. Good luck.